Good morning. Nice to see you. And Eden, just thank you so much. I can't see you now and everyone, but you're somewhere here. There you are. Yeah, just wonderful. The way you've served and been such an example. You are. You may not feel it. You are. In so many ways. I feel slightly echoey, but I'm sure that you'll feel like I'm in a barrel slightly, but that's okay. We'll sort that out. Just before we go on to kind of the main content of what I want to speak on today, just a quick shout out. Well, number one, say a huge thank you to those who serve. I'm not hearing what Eden, she's been involved in so many different areas of church life. And Sundays, the gathering, youth just going out. Well, they're served by youth leaders and welcome on the way in, and the guys on the PA at the back and doing the sound and everything. And it takes so many people it's good to facilitate us gathering in this way. And obviously one of the areas, a growing area of the church is among our children. It's a burgeoning, that is a word, isn't it, burgeoning? It's a growing, kids work and youth actually, literally 100 and I think we've got 140 or something under 18s or something. So we need, people to serve, obviously. And the last thing anyone wants is a guilt trip on this, but I'm not trying to do that at all. It's a privilege to serve. And among the kids' work, particularly in Generate, some of the older children range between, is that 8s and 11s? Is it, Dan? I'm looking at you because you're married to Emily. You don't know it. Anyway, I think that older age range, we're looking for some more team members, but particularly for men. And now look, again, last thing you want to serve out of doing is, I better do it, whatever. No, catch our heart for it. There's one of my favorite quotes, and is this, about a man. Okay? A man is never as big as when he's on his knees to help a child. I like that quote. A man is never as big as when he's on his knees to help a child. It's not a kind of bonus bit of the meeting so we can kind of do the main thing in here. It's as important as what goes on in here and what goes on in youth and other things. And so if you've got faith for that and you want to know more, and it's not every week, it's once every sort of 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, be part team. You might think, God, I don't know if I could do that. Go and have a chat with one of the kids' workers. Emily leads it all in the teams, but there's many teams. They've got the T-shirts on Sundays. Or if you want to know more, go to the back, speak to the welcome team afterwards. How can I get involved in that? I'd like to even just have a go one week. And if it doesn't fit, fine. Don't do it again. That's okay. To try something and think, it's not quite me. But maybe you feel stirred in that. I would encourage you to do that. Anyway, you may have noticed maybe you haven't noticed, a little table at the back there next to our giving table. It's got some stuff on to do with what's called the Hope Initiative. And that's a word that 2 words in fact, that we use to just frame everything that goes on here that is kind of under the banner of really helping people who are affected by all different types of poverty and all the different things that we might do as a church, both organized, but in our everyday lives as well. It's kind of under Hope Initiative. So if you hear that phrase, that's what that phrase kind of encapsulates. And we wanted to give some time on a Sunday morning just to really unpack this a little bit more, talk a little bit about what's going on, what we're doing as a church, or what God might be doing with us, but also about us individually as well, in our own everyday lives, how that's to impact us. So that's at the back. It's kind of breaking in on that we're doing a series on joy. So it's kind of breaking in on that slightly, but that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to talk for a bit, then we're going to watch a little video. Ben Pearson has done just a little video, just giving a bit of history, where we've come from with this, with King's Care and other things. And then Helen, Drew, is going to be interviewing some people about what they're doing in their everyday lives. And then Ruth is going to come and lead us in a bit of a response in that as well. And I'll just kind of set the scene for us as well. So I don't know what you feel about when you even hear a sort of Sunday about this subject, about helping people that are maybe affected by poverty in all sorts of ways, like we talked about. How do you feel about it? And the need is huge, isn't it? That's one thing, right? The need is just massive. If you watch the news, you walk down the streets. And I printed off some resources from Jubilee Plus. You'll hear a bit more about them later on. but they've just got kind of the UK scene here on their website. And this is from 2019. And I'll just read about some of these. So this is to do with homelessness. It's estimated that 726 homeless people died on the streets in England and Wales in 2018. And then it compares it with the council spending. I'm not knocking the council here, by the way, at all. I'm not saying that. But council spending on support for a single homeless person or people was cut by 53% between around 2009 to 2018. I'm not blaming anyone there. I'm just saying that this is the need that's out there. Another sort of statistic here, 9 children in average class of 30, 9, that's nearly a third, obviously you can do your maths, are living in poverty. 9 in an average class of 30 are living in poverty. 4.1 million children, that is. And yet we've seen cuts, obviously, taking place in services and, 225,000 older people across the UK regularly go an entire week without speaking to anybody. 225,000. The entire week. Loneliness. When we start talking about poverty and things, we're not just talking about material poverty, physical poverty, absolutely, but there's relational poverty. In our relationships with one another, when we are deprived from what we actually need to live a fully flourishing human life. We need one another, and yet loneliness. And I'm aware that some of these things may be affecting people here. You may be sitting there thinking, well, that's me. I know what it's like to experience that. And then it talks about lots of other things. I won't go more because I don't need to really. You know the need, and it's huge in our culture. And like I said, we see it on the news. Government are doing what they can to help and so on. And that's just that's just the UK. Then when you start to take into account the world and you start to watch the news and so on. Just this week I've had conversations with friends in Kathmandu, in the Himalayas, where they faced devastating floods and ripped out homes and a church building. And then talking to my friends, Edward in Kenya on Friday, and they're facing floods as well, and they're facing violence as well. They can't get even travel to some of these areas that need help. I mean, it's just huge. And so the need is huge. The second thing is, and if you're a follower of Jesus, you'll know this, the Bible's really clear on this stuff. That helping those who are affected by poverty is to be a priority. And the Bible does talk about within the church family that there's no one need, but also more widely as well. And we see that in church history, that right at the beginning of the church, helping those in need who are among them. And it's clear through the heartbeat of God, as it were, comes through the Bible. We see it ultimately in Christ as he seeks out the disadvantaged. He looks, those that maybe are looked down upon by others, maybe sneered at, maybe kind of, they've just ruined their own lives. Jesus goes and seeks those people out, comes alongside them, the disadvantaged, the marginalized, those that are marginalized maybe through sickness, or their age, or their gender, or their ethnicity. We see Jesus seeking those people out, elevating them, takes a little child who's maybe on the edge and brings them front and center. Says, you want to know what greatness looks like? This is Jesus in the Bible. We see it, it's clear, helping to meet one another's needs. Jesus' command to love your neighbor. He says the whole law and the prophets, and just think the whole Old Testament pretty much, is summed up in that. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So the need's huge. The Bible's clear. How do you feel? Because there's a few things that I've felt over the years when it comes to this. Maybe you can relate to them. Overwhelmed. Maybe you just look at it all and it's just like, there's so much suffering in the world. Where do I start? What do I do? Maybe you just feel overwhelmed. And if you're overwhelmed by it all, it can easily lead to sort of freezing, almost doing nothing. Well, I'll just kind of, I won't engage with it at all, because if I engage with it, I just don't know where to draw my own boundaries and how to handle this in a healthy way and in a sustainable way. And it's just kind of all a little bit overwhelming. Maybe that's how you feel. I remember, we can feel like that phrase, drop in the ocean, and a question that Mother Teresa was once asked about the work that she did in Calcutta. Well, surely it's just a drop in the ocean what you're doing. And her inspired reply, maybe many of you know this, the ocean's made up of many drops. It may be a drop in the ocean. It may be a small thing. But one of the things that can help us from not being overwhelmed is thinking of maybe small steps. And really today, that's kind of what we want to talk about. Or maybe you don't feel overwhelmed. Maybe you feel guilty. Maybe we feel guilt for having stuff, for having a home, for having food, whatever it might be, as we see suffering in the world. And this can lead to a couple of things sometimes, I think. It can either make us, out of guilt, we start to act. Well, I better do something, so I'll do something. We act out of guilt. I'll give to that charity, and phew, I feel a little bit better about myself now. Oh, good, I'll carry on with life. And then another kind of, someone else talks about it, or there's another appeal for something, comes along, oh, I feel guilty again, or I better act this time. It's not a great way to be. Or the other thing, if we're acting out of guilt, actually, what we can do, we can spill over into the lives of others and try and motivate other people out of guilt. And guilt is a rubbish motivator. It's rubbish. So we can feel overwhelmed, we can feel guilty, or sometimes maybe we become driven in it. We see the need, well, we've got to take on the world ourselves and kind of do it all, and we're going to end poverty in our generation. And I love enthusiasm. I love that. But sometimes we can become driven in that, and maybe we seek to try and just do it all out of our own strength, and eventually, if that's what we're doing, we will hit a wall. We will probably burn out, and we'll get to the point where actually we're not able to help people over the long haul if we're driven. Maybe even we do it out of drivenness, even not because we're driven to meet other people's needs, but I think we've just got to be honest sometimes and look at ourselves and go, am I doing this to meet a need in myself? Because what I see in Jesus actually is he didn't need to help people to make himself feel better. Now, again, I'm not saying it doesn't feel good when you help someone and you give, and there's more joy to give than receive and all of that. I'm just saying that there can be an unhealthiness in that as well. And we need to watch out for those things. And I've been all three. But it's draining, it's wearying, and linking into the series we're doing on joy, it's joyless. You will have the joy sucked out of you in your serving. And it will not be joyful serving. Yeah? If we're doing it from those things. And thankfully, what we've been singing about and celebrating this morning, the reason, why start a meeting with that kind of deal, focusing on Jesus, what he has done, celebrating the goodness of God in the person of Christ, is because without being fueled by the grace of God, we'll just run into all those things. And we'll grow weary, not just individually, even as a church. There's a phrase that's bounded around, isn't there? Maybe you've heard it, it's compassion fatigue. Love fatigue or whatever, this sort of, and I understand why people have coined that phrase. And so it's important that we are on our feet doing stuff, but we're also in that place of abiding in God in the gospel of grace and serving out from that place, being fueled by him in our lives that will enable us over the long haul to give and to serve and to help. Does that make sense? I know you know this, but in his grace, that's so important that we're rooted there. So we're fueled by grace. We're not motivated by guilt. We're not becoming driven people. We're not overwhelmed by it because we're those that are prayerfully saying, Lord, what do you want me to do? I know I can't do everything, but I can do one thing. I can do something. I could take another step in growing in generosity, whatever that might. I can do that. I can do this though. What is it for you? And we see people motivated by this wonderful grace in the Bible. There's a guy called Zacchaeus. You can read about it in Luke chapter 19. And as a tax collector, he was probably pretty wealthy and up a tree, if you know the story, and he's trying to see Jesus coming through, and Jesus ends up seeing him, pulling him out, not literally pulling him out of his tree, that wouldn't be nice, but getting him out of his tree, says, well, I'm going to come down, I'm going to come and eat with you today and be with you today. We don't know what that conversation was with Zacchaeus. I mean, Jesus gets knocked for eating with sinners as usual. People, you shouldn't be associating with those people. We don't know what the conversation was, but we do know what the fruit was, because Zacchaeus comes out, and one of the things he says is, do you know what? I'm going to repay everybody who I've ripped off, and I'm going to give half of my possessions, what I own, to the poor. An encounter with grace in the person of Jesus resulted in him doing that. Now, the danger is, all right, that's the rule. Half your possessions. Glad it's not all of them. Half of them. Okay. No, that's not the rule. We know it's not the rule because if you go back one chapter in Luke to chapter 18, literally just before it, and you read about the rich young ruler, and Jesus says to him, what does he say to him, the rich young ruler, those that know? Give away everything. Oh, but hang on, Zacchaeus, half. Jesus doesn't then berate Zacchaeus and say, Zacchaeus, no, you got it wrong, mate. The rule is everything. Oh, so there isn't like this hard and fast rule thing that we kind of go, just because they've got faith, but they're doing that I've not got to literally sell up everything and do that. No, okay, but is it half? No, okay, what is it then? Well, I think it leads each of us to then come before God, have an encounter with Jesus, and allow out from that for him to work in your life, in your circumstances, within the way he's made you for who you are, in the place you are, with the resources that you have, to say, Lord, what does this mean for me? And I'm glad it's that way round. It's not a rule to beat us over the head or to make us feel guilty about. We don't compare ourselves with others. We might get encouraged by them. We read stories of people who do all sorts of extraordinary things, but sometimes that can discourage as well. I can never do that, so we do nothing. Now, I know that's not true for the church family at King's. We know that this DNA is through the church family at King's, in terms of this heartbeat of God for people in poverty. There's another lady just quickly in Acts chapter 9 called Tabitha. And Tabitha dies. And there's this outpouring of grief for this lady, so much so that they try and get Peter and the other apostles, come and pray for her. We want you to pray for her. And it's a beautiful story of God's power at work. But what it says about this lady in Acts chapter 9, verse 36, it says in Joppa, this little town, there was a disciple named Tabitha, which when translated is Dorcas. And what was she doing? She was always doing good and helping the poor. She was always doing good and helping the poor. A disciple, a follower of Jesus. Where's our banner? Oh, it's not here. Okay, gather, grow, go, making disciples of Jesus. That's what we're about, learning to be like him. A disciple. As a disciple, she was always doing good and helping the poor. Who wouldn't mind that being read out at their funeral? For you, for me. And again, not guilt-driven, not getting overwhelmed by grace. Out from there, the love of God, being so overwhelmed by God's love from grace and generosity to us, that out from there we say, Lord, just help me now. And yeah, beautiful. She was learning to walk like him. What does she do? Well, it actually says, it goes on in Acts chapter 9. I can't find it. It's where she was making clothes for people in need. She used to make all these clothes, and as people were grieving, they were bringing out these clothes, going, look at this one she made, look at this one she made, look at this one she made. I couldn't do that. Jean, my wonderful wife, she's an amazing knitter. Sorry. She is. For me, it's not going to look like knitting clothes. Now, it might not look like that now. But the point is we're all made differently. And so the question is, what can we do? In what way? She didn't run a big kind of clothing charity for the poor and set up a massive project and lead a big team and do all of this. She just quietly got on with it from the means that she had to help other people, from her resources to bless others. It was within her life. And that's what we want at King's. And we've done big projects here at King's and things like that. And what we're going to do now is watch a little video from Ben Pearson. And just going to, a little video there, just a little bit of history of where we come from. And then Helen's going to come up and interview some people in a moment. So over to you, Ben.
In the year 2000, King's Care opened its doors to those in Norwich that were vulnerable and often homeless. The aim and hope of the service was to provide a safe space each Sunday in which friendships could grow between those in Kings and our guests. This was alongside practical support, such as providing hot meals, laundry and washing facilities. King's Care had the gospel at its centre and took seriously Jesus' attitude and heart towards those stuck in poverty and oppression. King's Care went on for many years and saw lots of fruit. Long-term friendships were made, some were saved, and plenty of others saw the love of Jesus through the kindness of our volunteers. In March 2020, the COVID pandemic struck, and this saw a major reset in terms of the practical provision and number of guests we saw. When we opened again at the end of 2021, we served fewer guests, but tried to focus on those at the acute end of the housing need in Norwich. During this time, God was beginning to change our direction, and much thought and prayer was given to the future of King's Care and how we might be able to address poverty within our community more broadly. Eventually, we felt that God was bringing the service to a close, and our last session was in May 2023. Over the years, a number of prophecies had an influence on King's Care. These and a general sense of God's direction began to form an idea within Kings that we must make empowering the poor part of the essential DNA of the church. Rather than focus on specific projects, we're to develop a culture, both individually and together, that makes helping to lift those out of poverty a key part of our Christian lives. Out of this, the Hope Initiative was born. This is led by the HIT, the Hope Initiative team, a group of 8 or so that can meet together regularly to discuss and pray into this exciting new vision. During this last year, the HIT has tried to ask some big questions of ourselves in regard to poverty within our community. What is the need? What is God asking us to do? What are our resources and where are we lacking? These questions have begun to shape our practical response to the church, but at a much deeper level, what our heart response ought to be, and how this can permeate through the whole church family. We are at the beginning of an exciting journey, something that God has been sowing into the hearts and minds of many in Kings over years. Some is now coming to fruition. We hope you're excited for what God has planned ahead. I would love as many as possible of you to join us in the next steps.
Wonderful, thank you. And, Ben, like others, who served on King's Care? Just stick your hand up, give us a wave. Who served over the years? Numbers of people. So this is a key moment as a church, really, over the past months and heading into this next year or so, about how this gets outworked at King's, which we're really excited about. But it is happening in terms of what people are doing in their everyday lives. And so Helen is now going to come, and you're going to now take over.
So I've asked a few people to come up. If you'd like to come over here for me, please, that would be really helpful. We thought it would be really good to get a little snapshot of a few people that are doing things in caring for people in poverty, all different things. Do come on the stage. We've tried to pick a really diverse range of people in what they're doing. Some people, we might have to sort of, take turns. Some people it's their job. Some people it's something they volunteer in. Some people it's what they're doing with their family. And we thought it'd be really helpful just to hear a little bit from them. I've asked them 2 questions. And I'm going to ask them those 2 questions again. And I've told them to answer in 1 sentence. But I'm very aware it's really difficult to share your heart with 1 sentence. So we will let them have a little bit of leeway. So the 2 sentences are, what do you do? And why do you do it? So they've had chance to think about this. And I have asked them about very specific things. So just so you know. So which end shall we start?
I came that end to be last. Okay, so what do I do? I'm part of the excellent Belong team. So Belong used to be Warm Space, used to be Community Space, but I think we now call it Belong, which is a great name. So Belong team on a Monday. So it sets to provide folks, some of whom are already part of our family, our church family here. Others are not yet part of our church family here. But it provides them with a warm and a friendly, a safe and a welcoming environment where they can enjoy free tea and coffee and a low-cost meal and a chance to chat and or play board games. It's all very simple, but it's good. Why do I do it? We've already heard about Tabitha doing good to the poor and needy in Acts 9. I've picked Galatians 6:10, which says, as we have opportunity, let's do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers. So it's a scriptural sort of exhortation, but actually it's a deep joy and a privilege to be part of this team. I get a real buzz, a real joy and delight in seeing people come in sort of slightly and watching them visibly relax, enjoying social interaction, chatting with one another, certainly enjoying the food and the drink and so on, and feeling safe enough to be able to share their stories and release their burdens.
Lovely, thank you, Dave. Steve?
Up until last November, I'd served 31 years as a trustee of an organisation called the Matthew Project, which helped people to recover from drug and alcohol abuse. Why? Well, principally because I felt God was calling me to do that. It's a bit of a long story how I got into it. I'm sure I'm not going to bore you with it all now, but if you really want to know, then do come and chat to me afterwards, and I'm happy to tell you.
Thank you, Steve. So, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm part of the SOS team that we meet out on Prince of Wales between sort of 9:30 and 3:30 in the morning, helping anyone that's just sort of who needs some help, whether it be with sobering up, charging their phones, giving them some warm clothes or flip-flops, or just simply someone to talk to. I do it because I feel called to help others and to care for others at their time of need and when they're at their most vulnerable.
Thank you. Angela?
I work for a children's charity at HMP Norwich, which is a remand prison just up the hill. And I've been there for 5 years. And I work helping dads record bedtime stories for their children, which then get sent to them on a video. I help on family days, and I'm also at the moment running a parenting course for some of the dads. Why do I do it? Well, I'd been a teacher for 40 years. I'd seen the devastation that can happen to children who don't know why their daddy isn't there. And I just know God is a gracious God who gives us all second chances, and everybody deserves a second chance. And I absolutely love it.
Thank you so much. Ruth and Matt?
Yeah, so the what for us is for our family. So we're a family of 5. We've got 3 kids. And we built our family both through birth children, but also through adopting. And yeah, it was over a process, and through that process, we also did a bit of fostering for about 6 months for our adopted child. And that just kind of, we did enabled contact with birth parents and so on. And it just kind of, opened our eyes to, I guess, the bittersweetness of adoption in that, our family is really blessed, but also it's sad. There is sadness in it that, that children go through trauma, go through experiences which are not their fault. And that's kind of our story of it.
And the why. So I think God kind of broke our hearts a little bit for children that are in care. We went to a couple of talks with some people from a charity called Home for Good, and I read the Home for Good book as well. And there was a statistic in there that said if one family in every church in the UK stepped up to foster or adopt, there wouldn't be any more children waiting in the care system. And I felt like, oh, okay, this is something that is on God's heart. And actually that we could do something practical about it. And I was just reminded of the bit in Psalm 68. It says that God is the father of the fatherless, and also that he places the lonely in families. And that's not all about adoption and fostering, but for us that was our outworking of hospitality in our family.
Thank you. Don.
Hello, I'm Don, and I head up the coffee shop, and as Toby said there, to change the lyric, what we do is that we run the coffee shop and we provide a safe environment for people to come into and have a nice cup of coffee. And more importantly, why do I do it? I do it to, in a sense, to give back what was given to me, to allow people to enter into the fellowship of the coffee shop, enter into the fellowship with kings, and enter into the fellowship with God, ultimately. But to give what was given to me because it saved lives.
Good morning, church. My lovely wife Elspeth and I, we served for the last 25 years Emmanuel Ruchalba and Life Ministries Christian Centre in East Africa. We educate the poor and the compassionate and the needy. We provide training for leaders. We plant churches. We have medical centres. We have children's projects. What do we actually do?
Well, what do we do? I do loads of things, and basically whatever I'm asked, it can be helping in the immunization clinic, can be helping with phonics in school, washing floors in the hospital, leading Bible studies with people on the fringes, just literally whatever Emmanuel asks us to do, we do it. And why do we do it? Well, God is so good. My life has been impacted by the love of Jesus. And he has given me such confidence. I just want other people to know how wonderful and transformative it is to become a Christian and serve him.
You can tell we work well as a team. God clearly called us to this ministry, and Emmanuel invited us to join his team. But the greatest thing about it is that over the years, we get incredibly blessed just by serving in this area in Uganda and the surrounding areas. We think that we go there to bless them, and undoubtedly we make a difference, but they bless us by so much more, and that's the gift that God gives us for serving them. He blesses us abundantly. Thank you. Oh, and as Steve said, if anyone wants to talk about it, I'm more than welcome all day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Come in that way. Eliana.
Hi, so I work for Norfolk County Council in their Homes for Ukraine Refugees team, which was my first job after graduating university at UEA the other year. And what that involves is a range of different tasks, really, just the daily running of the scheme, like DBS checks, payments, welfare reports, things like that, making sure everyone's okay from the county level. I don't get to visit the Ukrainians themselves, but we make sure everything's working well. Why do I do it? This was essentially the opportunity I was given. I came out of uni, was looking for jobs, and just felt like God made it really easy for me to land this position, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. I feel like it's so important to do what we can for these huge world crises that, as Toby said, can seem so overwhelming. And more personally, I feel like God has really taught me patience and humility through this role, and how to, just really work his heart in the mundane daily tasks, and how he'll bring that together for a bigger picture, even when I feel like my role is insignificant. He's really shown me how that's the most important thing we can do, just do what we can in our small ways.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's great. Thank you. Really, really appreciate you coming up and sharing a little bit and keeping it brief. We know that story's repeated right across the room with other things, and I'm sure over time we'll hear some more of those things as well. I was going to talk through a list of things we're currently doing here, but I probably should introduce myself first because I realise I just stood up here. I'm Helen. I'm part of the city centre team here, and I lead some of our, what we're now calling Hope Initiative projects during the week. And I've got a big list in front of me. I was looking at it this week and adding up how many people are on each team, and it's over 50 people serving on these teams, and right across all different things that happen through here and at Mile Cross. And I was just going to share a list of what they are. So we run the Belong Welcome Space on a Monday that Dave talked about. We've got the English Conversation group running on Tuesday evenings. Then there's 2 baby and toddler groups running here on Wednesdays and Thursdays. There's also my crazy idea of family drop-in, which I love, on a Saturday. That's only once a month, though. And then last year, and I'm hoping again this year, we've got a small team of people who washed sleeping bags for the winter night shelter. Then also at the venue at Mile Cross, we've got Cuppa and Catch Up on a Monday, which welcomes all sorts of people in for a chat. And there's 2 baby and toddler groups also running at Mile Cross. And they've all got amazing people serving and looking out for people, and the diversity of people that come through the doors. Some who are economically or have not got a lot of money, some who really struggle with their mental health and just need somewhere to come, some who get really lonely because they're stuck at home on their own, some families who it's a really tough time and they just need someone to talk to. And so it's really, really different, and you never quite know some weeks who's going to turn up, but it's great. Well, we always need more people, and I know of several gaps already. I've left what I'm going to say next over there. Just get down again. There's copies of these sheets at the back of the room, so you're very welcome to pick one up at the end of the meeting. As part of what we're doing this morning, I was really stirred to try and share a little bit about why I do what I do, and to tell you a little bit about how I started. And sometimes I find this really hard to talk about, so you'll have to excuse me if I get a bit emotional in the middle, but I'm going to do it anyway. A few years ago, I was in a very broken place. Some things had happened, some events that had happened that I had very little control about, made it a very hard and lonely time. I didn't know what was going to happen, and looking back, I can see now that in my life I always wanted to be in control, and at this point I really wasn't. And at this time as well, God broke something in me, something that I couldn't do. And I remember saying to Jean in a conversation that I realised that if all I ever did in my life was be a good wife and a good mum, that was enough. Didn't have to do anything else. God accepted me as I am, and that was enough. And God taught me a lot about trusting him when you didn't know what was going to happen. Trusting him even when you can't see and you're not sure. And my favourite verse in that time, and still is one of my favourite verses, is from Psalm 27. Right at the end it says, "I am still confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart and wait for the Lord. Just after, or around this time, I went back and tried teaching again. Trained as a physics teacher. And after a year, I decided it really wasn't what I wanted to do. And there was a gap. There was a gap to lead a toddlers team, a toddlers session on a Thursday. It was a new group. They had so many families, there were enough to do a second group. And there was no one to lead it. And I thought maybe I could do that. So I did. And that's right back in 2018, so a few years ago now. And I've been doing it ever since, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's good fun. I started helping Ailsa with some of the work with the refugees that were coming from Afghanistan and got involved with some of the stuff she was doing. A long time ago, God spoke to me about caring for the poor. Philippa Stroud, I heard her speak, and it really spoke to me, but I'd done nothing about it. And I wouldn't say I started doing anything of what I'm doing because of that. But over time, God's spoken to me, God's stirred me, and I'm very different today, well, I think I am, than where I was before. I was thinking about this as I was writing. I've got a growing love of welcoming and loving people, whoever they are, whoever comes through the door. A love of community, being in groups, being part of church family. A love for families, a passion to see the lonely and the broken set into community, and obviously, ultimately, into church family. And I'm so grateful to God that it's Him who is able, and it's Him who is faithful. I absolutely love what I do. I stood last Saturday in the middle of the room with loads of people all around me, with families, people from all different nations and different backgrounds, different religions. And I just stood there. It's a bit chaos to some people, but I just love it. And just get excited for God's heart for the lost and the lonely and the families that haven't got any extended family in this country. And I know that God's got a plan. And God's the one that's in control. And I'm so thankful because I can't do it all. And yeah, that's why I do what I do.
Thank you, Helen. Right, so do the band want to come back up? And then I've invited Ruth is going to come. Where's Ruth? There you are, there's Ruth. Is going to come and lead us to respond. And so, Ruth, I'll just hand over to you to do that.
Oh, that's been really amazing. I feel really moved hearing all of those stories and experiences and everyone's kind of why reason. We're going to respond in prayer, but first I'll just kind of... there's some practical bits, there's some practical steps, thank you. So, on your rows, you might be sitting on it, might be next to you. There's these little blue cards that Sarah Castle's beautifully put together for us. This is kind of practical next steps. We're going to talk about our hearts and our kind of our response to God in a minute. But there's some practical stuff that we can do, and we thought as a team, what are the practical steps? And first, it's really praying and coming to God. So, yeah, look at your card. There's a QR code. There's some digital resources on Jubilee Plus, but there's also a Stand in the Gap prayer resource at the back that I think we've got enough for one for every household. So if you want to grab one of those, it's just really a really good resource. If you want to pray for this massively overwhelming topic of injustice and poverty in the world, it's a really good place to start because it chunks it up into little bits, and it just makes it accessible to pray. And then learn more. There are some little, if you go, I would encourage you, go to the bookshop today, see if you can spot this colour in some of the books in the bookshop. There's some books that have got little Hope Initiative bookmarks in, that we think are just really good places to start. If you want to learn more about God's heart for those who are in poverty, go and have a look at the back. There is also a book that we're really promoting today, which is called "'Tis Mercy All." It's written by Natalie Williams, who heads up the Jubilee Plus project that we're kind of partnering with. It's £6. It is more expensive everywhere else, I think. So if you want to grab it, it is a bargain. It's £6 today, and that is at the back that you can pick that up as well. That's another really good place to start if you want to kind of learn more, and then take action. What can you do? You can get involved in one of the Hope Initiative groups that Helen was just talking about. But also there's a resource at the back which I think is called the Deepening Crisis, or the Cost of Living Crisis, and that is a really good resource. That has got some really practical steps that you can take. Things like donating to the food bank, things like there's different charities and things that you can get involved with. So if you're sitting here thinking, it's too much, I can't do anything, have a look at that booklet, because that's got some really good ideas and resources. And then lastly, just on the topic of Jubilee Plus, there's a conference coming up in November. It's in Liverpool, but we're going to do a live stream here, so you can come here instead of going to Liverpool. You can find out more about that in the loop, and you can sign up as well. So those are kind of the practical things. And I was talking to Toby in the week, and Toby said that our response to this is deeply spiritual, but it is also deeply practical. So we're going to respond in prayer, but don't forget this. Like, let's take some practical steps as well. So when we were planning this, we were just feeling like maybe that as we heard the testimonies and the stories this morning and what Toby was talking about, that maybe there might be some people here who God was just stirring in their hearts. Maybe there was people feeling stirred about the stuff around the prisons, or the families, or the people that are on Prince of Wales Road on a Friday and Saturday night that really need God's help. That maybe God was just stirring your heart for some of those things, or different things. But also maybe you're a bit like Helen, and that actually years ago maybe you'd had some words, or that God had spoken to you in the past, and that today it might be a day to kind of come and ask God and say, okay, God, are you speaking to me about this again? So we felt like there might be some individuals that maybe you feel like God's speaking to you. But actually, this is a response for all of us. It's not, caring for those in poverty is not just something that's just for a few people who are really passionate and noisy about it and have got spare time. But actually, it's for all of us. That as we walk with Jesus, as we become more like him, that actually we care about the things that he cares about. And as Toby was saying, that actually Jesus really cared about those that were on the fringes, and he really cared about the vulnerable and those living in poverty. So actually, that as we become more like Jesus, we'll become more merciful, we'll care more about justice, we'll become more loving and kind. So I think my prayer for all of us today is that, there's all these issues and all these really difficult, hard things, but actually, if our response as a church family can be, okay, we're gonna try and live like Jesus. We're gonna try and care about the things that he cares about in the power of his Holy Spirit and because of his grace, then I think that's a really good place to start. So we're gonna sing in a minute, but if we all stand, and I'm just gonna pray for us all. So if you just kind of get however you worship and however you kind of engage with God, if you just, kind of get yourself in that position, I'll just pray. Oh, King Jesus, I do pray that you would come now in your love and in your grace and in your mercy, and would you come and soften our hearts. I know my heart often gets hard, and I get busy with life, and I feel like I've got nothing to give, haven't got any spare capacity. Lord, would you come and soften our hearts? Would you come and align our hearts with your heart? There's that line in the song that says, God, would you break our hearts for what breaks yours? Come and fill us with your mercy, with your kindness, with your love. The next steps will be the next steps, but the first thing, Lord, is that our hearts will be aligned with your heart. Out of your goodness and your grace to us, out of your love for us, would that overflow to those around us in our community? And God, would you show us, what does it mean for me? What does this look like in my life? It's going to look different for all of us, but what would it look like in my life? So, Holy Spirit, as we worship in a second, would you come and just, come and minister to us? And if you do feel like God's been speaking to you, and you feel like God's putting something on your heart, kind of to do, or that you feel like God's, maybe putting on your heart a person or a project or something, an area of life that he wants you to do something, or just that you actually feel like your heart's breaking for something. We're going to have some people here at the front ready to pray with people. So if you feel like you would like to stand with somebody and pray with somebody, or just explore that more and just ask God to do something in you, would you, as we worship, do you come forwards now? And we'd love to pray with you.